scholar. Look like a martyr to marauders like Tartar. Wise owl slaughter, whack MCs order applauder. Original woman, decipher the womb. Crown of creation, fruit of the planet, earth and the moon.
Peace, peace, peace. Welcome to another episode of Wise the Dome. Today I have my brother and friend of the show. We have a lot to talk about, man. Since the last time you've seen him, a book has come out, an album has come out, and God is constantly working. And so we're definitely going to get into some of that. We're also going to get into some of the history of power rule, Puerto Rico, and some of the movements for liberation that they've had in the past and currently. But right now, Sunez, I know you got some bad news today, and you kind of just want to.
I did.
I'm gonna give you the floor, and I just want you to kind of build on that for me.
That's peace. I appreciate that. You know what I'm saying? I learned today we're 5%ers, me and you. For those that listen in, not only your guests, they're from all walks of life, all kind of theologies, ideologies that are honestly useful to our community. You know what I mean? That's the glory of what you do.
Appreciate
it. Among us 5%ers, that teacher that takes us through the mathematics, the supreme alphabet, and the 120 lessons, though we call them, a lot of us call those teachers our enlighteners, you know what I'm saying? And I do too, because they enlighten the path, you know what I'm saying? And I love the uniqueness of the name. I love the reverence of the name of it, you know what I mean? The how it shows that love. And my enlightener, knowledge me, he returned to the essence. And I learned that today, and he passed away. And I had just posted a video that students had shared with me that they were just with him in a different class at a law school, a law shop class, you know? And I'll tell you this though, like, this is an elder that, like, on the I'll quote one line from the album, song called The Build. I said, my enlightening knowledge me said KOS is accountability, responsibility. So bathing self daily of belief be the facility. So bathing self of belief means, like, you find the thing that is most that you're doing the most with the most little knowledge, that you are dealing with the most accountability, that you don't that is most important, but you have the least amount of knowledge. That's where your next belief is probably at. And it takes a knowledge of self to even be able to find ideas like that, to even scrutinize that. And this is one of the many teachings that I came up with under his tutelage. You know what I mean? He was so accountability. I remember when I first learned with him, just give listeners an idea about, like, how being a poor righteous teacher is such an important thing. When I met him, I had already memorized supreme math alphabets and the 1 to 10.
Wow.
Now, I was with the God Day Son. He's the God that brought me. You know what I'm saying? One of the great writers in hip hop history. Also, you know what I mean? And also he's known as DX21 Crazo. He did Star and Buck Wilds. He was the one writing all those jokes and everything like that, among many things. And he brought me there, and I didn't know how I would be received. You know what I'm saying? So I had memorized all that. I had read a lot of books, you know what I'm saying? A lot of Elijah books, I read Destruction of Black Civilization. I was ODing. Like, I don't know if they're gonna accept me as Puerto Rican, things like that. Of course, I was accepted immediately. And my first class, the most immediate class held, was his, and I went to his, and it was May 4th, 1999. This is how long ago it goes.
Wow.
And I had built, and I thought I did okay. And at the end of the class, he dismissed everybody, and he told me to wait. And he asked me who I was and if I go to college. And I told him, what I do and everything like that. And he just said one thing, and it stuck with me. And it's, if you know the trajectory of my life, though, and obviously it was going to stay with me. He said, if you keep up in this path, you're going to be teaching at this school. He told me that the first day that I ever went to a class of his, you know what I'm saying? And since that day, I was groomed to teach. Like, that's why I tell people, like, I was taught to teach at the school. I wasn't just taught to teach among the 85 and teach. I was taught to teach in a classroom setting, but also a community school setting where people that you don't know are coming in looking for guidance and stuff, and how to deal with them and how to deal with people on many different levels in the classroom. So this is what I learned and stuff like that. He was the one that taught me, and constantly he was constantly making me actualize whatever it is I said I was doing. You know, so like again, a lot of it goes with the album. I told you that we did a song called Our Swords, you know, and that meant our sacred words. That wasn't made up by me. That was made up by Day-Sun.
Oh wow, okay.
And just like the name, the peace course that I teach, that acronym, political education and civilization enrichment, that was made up by Day-Sun. Day-Sun knew, because we went to class together too. He knew that he wouldn't be there every day, but he knew that I could teach. So he made up that name of that course and said, "Okay, I need you to come teach this, whatever it is." You know, he just kind of But
and that's kind of ill that your enlightener saw that in you from day one. You know what I mean?
It's mind blowing to me. It's mind blowing. Over the years, we would always laugh about that.
Right.
We'd always laugh about that. You
know and for those that don't know, you have the longest running class.
Oh yeah, by at least over 10 years. By over 10 years, like the longest running class ever at a law school in Mecca. And
jumping on that bed?
You know, the interesting thing about it, right, is that when he would always make me actualize everything. So, you know, he'd have classes where he would go, what does everybody do good? And then, you know, if you say you're a rapper, he's like, okay, then bring me a single next week. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Single. And it beat out a lot of people. You know, people not coming back when you give them that assignment. And he told me, this is 1999. He was like, you know, you write and everything and you edit. You come back, make your own magazine. And I was like, I don't even, you know what I'm saying? Like, like I just get a blog spot and I just got my joint. Like, and I got to get like writers. Okay. But I got to get the money to put that up and everything like that. I got to publish it. I got to print it. And I was like, okay, because you don't say no. You don't say no. Like, we're the true and living gods. Like, we could manifest this. So
no excuses, right?
That's what Our Swords became. And me and the Tate son, we went back and we sequestered and we did everything we could to get those monies, and we made it. But that's where the first published magazine I ever made was off of him pushing me through that door. So it's like stuff like that throughout. But I spent so much time learning from set 5%ers that were there, so many of them, because I would go every day. When I was taught to teach at the school, I was at the school every day. You know, being groomed, going places with them, like going to the school, but then end up somewhere else. Right. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm going with them. I'm rolling with him. Like I'd be with Dark Kim and they going to Pelon, and so I end up leaving from Pelon. That's where I'm gonna go home tonight. You know, and things like, and they're taking me under the wing and stuff like that, and just showing me things. You know what I'm saying? And that's why, like, when people wonder how I started teaching in literally April of 2000. That's
when that's pretty quick from the time you started going up there till
it is, you know, and it's like everybody was recruiting me to do something. I went to the school with someone that was already civilized. I didn't eat pork. I was already vegan since 1996. So by 1999, I was already like doing that. So I didn't that kind of civilization. You know what I'm saying?
That's before it became a popular fad.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I had to define this shit before I told
right.
You know, I'm coming from Puerto Rican, I'm telling Dominicans, and they're like, what? Like, they're thinking I'm some or something like that. Like, you know, he's vegan. Like, that means he drinks blood or something like that. Right? So it was crazy. It was crazy then. You know what I'm saying? Like, but man, I you know, the love I have for knowledge, me, is just, you know, it's like any of us would have for an enlightenment. So for me to expound on that would be like, it's not different. That's what I was saying. Like, it's not different. Like you love your enlightenment the way I love my enlightenment. Like,
actual facts.
It's special. It's special. You know what I'm saying? And these are people that spent hours with us and never asked for anything in return. They only ask that we teach a whole bunch of people.
Indeed.
And that always blew me away, guy.
Right. You know, that's interesting that you brought that up, because my enlightener, I was building with him a couple of days ago, and he was talking about like what a lot of people don't realize is in order to even do that, in order to even take on a student and not just take on a student, but actually be active in the community. It takes so much time, effort, and energy, right? This is a part of your life where it's a commitment that you make where you may not, what equality to be equal in everything. It doesn't mean that you'll be able to spend that much time with everything else whenever you're so committed to teaching and being this change. It's a real commitment. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Most especially in the MC world, whether they're 5% of MCs and stuff like that, and mostly everybody, they're always trying to redefine poor righteous teacher and stuff like that. But there is a certain poverty. There's many things that we give up. You know what I'm saying? And it's not always fiscal.
Right.
And there's many things that we give up and shit like that. And a lot of times it is money. Like for me, a lot of people don't understand. Like for me, in my experience at a law school in America, it has been money. Like that is what I have sacrificed. But that's something I was already sacrificing doing hip hop.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Because I could have wrote a lot of bullshit.
Right.
And I was like, no, I'm not doing that. You know what I'm saying? And so I lost that, like, and like I always tell you, like, that's how I have such a long resume with so many magazines, because I go, now I'm not writing about that.
Yeah.
So you gotta go somewhere else,
Right. You never was one to kind of go with the status quo, especially when it came to hip hop journalism, because for one, that is going against who I know my brother to be in the first place, right? Like, you're not going to, I mean, and I see that, I could see that, like, where the money would be in going with the status quo, right? But formally, I would just like to say, for me, to you, my condolences, and also peace of the God, and may he be remembered in perfection. You know what I'm saying?
Remembered in perfection, and that's why I came up with that saying, remembered in perfection, because so tired of losing elders and losing so many great artists that I knew over the years, like, everybody. So I was like, yo, we remember their greatness though. You know what I'm saying? Like,
right.
To me, they're not, I don't know if they sleeping and shit. And, I lost my old earth. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, I know wherever my old earth is, she ain't doing no sleeping.
Right. Right.
She ain't doing no sleeping though. That ain't what she's doing. So, you know what I mean? Like, she doing something in the other plane of existence. You know what I mean? It got nothing to do with sleep. So like how do we engage those who return to that sense? We remember. So that's why I said that. You know what I'm saying? And we're always in perfection. We're always constantly building,
Right.
So
there's a link. There's a link. Obviously, we talk about our trees, but the link is like a chain link. Like, they live forever. As long as you continue to do what you're doing, then the people that you taught continue to, like, that chain lives forever, man.
That's right. They can't stop that.
Nah, not at all.
You know what I'm saying?
I wanted to ask you this though, G, before we get into mantras over the Medinas, which is, hey man, fire. But before we get into that, I saw a new one. It was I don't know whether Complex did it, but it was like it was like the top 10 hip hop journalists.
Yeah.
And I always look to find your name, right? And if it's not there, then I'd say it's invalid. But like, a lot of those people on the list were failed. Well, I wouldn't say failed. They were retired MCs. And I don't necessarily have an issue with that, right? But it's kind of the idea that just because you MC, that doesn't necessarily make you a great journalist. But whenever you see those lists, you see who populates those lists. Like, what are your thoughts, man?
The first is like, for the listeners, I spent my whole career, except 1 year, I spent my whole career writing about hip hop, working to make it recognized as an element of hip hop.
Right.
Hip hop can only be an element if it's creative. You know what I'm saying? And I wrote my first piece in 1994. You know what I mean? In a school. And my first piece was in the college paper, CUNY Baruch College. And the first piece, it was called, I always like to say the night title because it's a dope title. It was called The Three R's That Feed and Starve Hip Hop. You know, radio, R&B, and what was it? Radio, R&B, and record labels.
Wow.
3 R's that feed and starve hip hop. You know what I'm saying? That's how it came in. You know
was that from the R&B hooks that was prevalent at that time?
R&B hooks, the dilution of the sound of the music. You know what I'm saying? Like R&B. You know what I'm saying? And so, you know, and also weak sampling, like sampling the song that came out 5 years ago.
Yeah, it's not even a sample. It's just jacking the beat. You know what I'm saying? Like, no chops, no nothing.
Exactly. You know, and but once 1995 came and I started to really be in the swing, first full year of writing, I was like, you know, I'm just writing about other people, and people respect it, but I don't know. I tried all the other elements, you know, back then, I tried the other elements, and I know I'm not good at the other elements. So I want to make this an element. And I was like, it's got to be creative. You know what I'm saying? And that's when I started to write a column in the college paper, and I called it Sunset Style because I'm from Central Park, Brooklyn. And that was when I started to write creative pieces. And I had gotten I had seen it from Bones Malone. Bones Malone had a column in Vibe magazine, and it was creative, and I didn't understand all of his slang, but I was like, oh, this shit's fire. Right. And I only read 2 columns. After that, I was like, I gotta do my own shit, so I can't read his anymore. Right. You know what I mean? Right. And I told him that too and shit. You know what I mean? And but then over the years, right, I realized that for it to be totally creative, the creative piece can't be a side piece that you write that is creative, like a side essay or creative prose that's hip hop styled. I want to write about the technicalities of the music review and the music interview and the music feature. Those are the 3 pieces of the journalist. And I want to make those creative. Right. So I started to do it with blatant, not just prose inside of it that were creative, but blatant poetry that was inspired from it, that would lead it and be injected into the piece. And that's what I said was going to be the element. And when I started to do that, that's when it became a real element. But nobody saw this, God. Nobody saw it. It's like no list that's going in the history of hip hop journalism makes sense to have me if they're looking at what I did in the 90s. The 90s, I was a struggling writer, and every single dope idea I had was nixed. You know what I'm saying? Wow. Right. Everything was nixed. Nothing I could do was dope. You know what I'm saying? Even when I did what they asked me to, they would chuck it. You know what I'm saying? So it was always a fight. And so the 90s was spending all these magazines just being a fly on the wall, or not a fly on the wall because I was a loud fly, so I wouldn't really talk about that. But being someone that just was witnessing the stuff, but not really getting to guide it though. You know what I'm saying? Not really getting to have the opportunity to write and do what I thought should be written. You know what I'm saying? So when I see the list, I saw a complex list recently of like the pioneers and shit like that in the media, in the hip hop media and shit like that. You know, Stretch and Bobbito, Great Bones Malone and shit like that, right? And I'm fine with that. I don't have no problem with all of them. I will tell you this though. Some of those people on that list though, they're the ones that I taught and they sold out. Wow. You know what I'm saying? I don't leave it like that. They know who I'm talking to. And I wouldn't be like that, but these are all people I've reached out to. So with the massive output of stuff that I've made, they've given me the we got to link up, this and that, or they just ignore. You know what I mean? So people know what I've done. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And a lot of terminology I use gets used. You know what I'm saying? Oh yeah. And a lot of times they don't even and I noticed, I've seen that, and they don't always pay homage or give the proper respect to the originator. When you see people writing them, telling like, yo, it's a new renaissance, it's this, you know, and using the words I use, you know, it's all, I'm just the first thing I think of. I'm like I'm forever trapped in the chalk by this kid. You know what I'm saying? Right. I'm forever trapped in it. You know what I'm saying? How people use my words ahead of time, you know? But if somebody was to say the best journalist now, like you said, the last, I don't know, since 2010, their list is not official if it don't have me. No, it ain't. It's got to have me somewhere, you know what I'm saying, with that, you know what I'm saying? And, but I don't really look for those kind of lists though. You know what I'm saying? I know I got cheated out of having that career that would dominate over everybody there.
And also too, God, they're kind of the same. It's the same with MC lists. Like when it comes from
Sure.
a platform like that, it's not going
Oh,
to be
absolutely.
indicative of who's really in that top 10.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's not gonna, not at all, not at
Mhm.
all. You know what I mean? And yeah, so I don't really look at those things like
Mhm.
that. You know what I'm saying? And you asked about like the rappers that become journalists, though. It
Mhm.
doesn't really have the same transfer of like a Hall of Fame athlete. You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
We'll go
That
keep
becomes
becoming a
a
coach,
commentator.
right?
You know what I
Or a
mean?
commentator, right?
Yeah, yeah, you know, and I do have a slight beef, even with, for me, sports though. I think it's a rare exception in the sports I've seen. I prefer Hall of Famers be commentators. I don't want to hear from a scrub player. Not have the,
Right.
yeah, no. I want to hear from the dominant source.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
there's very, very few. You know what I'm saying? And more,
Mhm.
they've been better. You see it more better in baseball than you see it in basketball. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? If they were
Mhm.
scrubs in basketball, they make horrible commentators. You know what I'm saying?
Right, right.
But yeah, when I see top 10 journalists and they put people on and shit like that, I'm like, none of these people is not even close to me. They didn't do half of the things I did. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Um, and they didn't, like, what's the measure of a journalist though, right? Do they find, is whether they find people that are going to be the next great artist. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Right? That's why I didn't see him on the list. I don't know if he was on the list though, but pretty much the all the guys that was doing the unsigned hype though, they're
Mhm.
legendary journalists though,
Mm.
because they were finding people that were incredible.
Right,
Okay?
right, right, right.
And people don't really get how much you have to sift through to find that. So
Mm.
I mean, that they're legends to me. When I was at the source though,
I never thought about that.
yeah, when I was at the
And that,
source,
yeah.
yo,
But
God, it was like a Chris Kringle mail. You know what I'm
mhm.
saying?
Right, right,
I
right.
went into the room and I was like, yo, that room's always empty. What's in it? And I said, yo, that's the unsigned hype room. And I went in there and it's just mail everywhere.
Wow.
Bags of mail, everything. This is back in 2005. So,
Right, right.
now you don't see that shit. You wouldn't see the physical mail, but imagine the
Mhm.
emails. You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
Mhm.
Obscene shit. Obscene shit. You know what I'm saying? And but do they find that great new music? When they write features, though, do they write features in a way that you find out things about that artist though that no one has found out before?
Mhm.
And the thing that has been most missing from all hip hop music journalism, the most, is, do they have what I call the science on music?
Mhm.
Do they have the details about the music? They might have the story of the making, but they don't have the details about the music. And that's why listeners are very poorly informed about
Right,
how a song is made.
right, right, right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, we're probably better informed about how I don't want to be a jerk, but say more difficult songwriting is made,
Mhm.
like melodies and written music,
Mhm.
is made, than we do about how a hip hop song is made. And that's why kind of people disrespect the MC.
Right.
There's no detail about how difficult it is to MC. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Difficult to write an actual song right. You know, the disrespect for the melody that comes into making a verse, not the hook, but the
Mm.
verse of the
Mm.
actual song.
Mhm.
You know
Right.
what I'm saying?
Mhm.
All of that shit is not in there. And the difficulty of making a hip hop beat, especially in the 90s, like, it was never described how difficult it was to sample on small reels and only use 8 seconds. Like, it was never detailed how difficult that was. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? And none of these things were found. You had to find these things out. You know what I'm saying?
I think does a pretty decent job of that. He wasn't an MC, but he was a musician, and I think Questlove,
Oh yeah, yeah.
he does a really
What's
good.
interesting you say
Mhm.
that is that Questlove gave me more insight into overtly defining what I'm doing than
Mhm.
the writers themselves. He used
Mm.
to write these blogs before OK Player became big. There was like
Mhm.
a kind of small website, and mainly it was him writing things. And he wrote how to do a review. And he was
Mm.
saying, you got to listen to this thing at least 5 times.
Right.
You
Right.
know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
And I was at magazines, I'm talking about major magazines, and they laughed at that. It was like, 5 times? We don't have no time for 5 times.
Mm.
And I
Right.
was like, the amount of music that was out, God, wasn't even close
To
to
what it is
that.
now.
So
Yeah.
5 times was definitely, like, it was worth it. It was
Mhm.
worth it because back then it could make the biggest difference.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? A good review and a bad review, especially like if when they were giving people like Public Enemy reviews that were like 3 stars, when they would give Smith and Wesson 3 stars, you know, like you got to detail that. You've got to look at why the album, why you're saying certain things, because you're lowering their grade so much, or because they made the grade such a distinction. Now, you know, instead of writing better, they wrote worse.
Wow.
You know, like if you give two albums a 4, to me, you've got to write the shit out of those reviews to show why that 4 is different from this 4.
Right.
And they don't do that. That's why I got, like, with every personal publication I ever had, whether it's Our Swords, or it was Lavo Revolt, or it's PremierHipHop.com now, or my own books, you never see no grades on shit.
Right.
A lot of people ask me for grades, like, what grade would you give it? And I'm like, I don't got no grades. You know what I'm saying? You know, I don't even. I'm a teacher, God. I don't give my students grades.
Why are we so conditioned when it comes to how we view this art, where it has to be graded? You know, like,
I think it's competitive, right? The nature of it is competitive, and so you kind of piggyback off the simplicity of the competitiveness. Let's have them win these mics. Let's have them win this. You know what I'm saying? And they didn't also have a good knowledge, like a real knowledge, not of older music per se, but a real detailed knowledge of the way music was written about. So, like, for example, I'm gonna tell you why you'll never read a review I write and it says classic in it, even if I think it. You know what I'm saying?
That word gets thrown around a lot too.
There's a lot of albums, like, people ask me personally, say, yo, I think it's, you know, it's classic shit. But I don't ever tweet that shit. I don't ever say that shit. 1996, right? I did Stakes is High came out, and I reviewed it. And it was just for the college, though. And I said it was a classic, you know what I'm saying? And then I'm like, then Iron Man came out. Philadelphia Life came out.
Another classic.
And I'm like, fuck. I'm literally like, I'm tight right here, because people's asking me, yo, but is it classic? Is it like already? You know what I mean? And then people were fronting, and I'm in New York, and I'm listening to Atlians, and I'm blown away. I'm blown away by the music. Like, Atlians blew me away. I'm like, man, it's too many classics, though. You know what I'm saying? They were arguing classics of the impact merged with the greatness of the album, like Machiavelli and shit like that. All Eyes on Me, right? They're flawed records. They have flaws on them. But Tupac is so important that the music is greater in many ways. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But, like, what the hell do I say with this shit?
Right.
Yo, I'm like, after 1996, like, yo, I'm never using that word again, though. I was angry at all these great records coming out instead of enjoying them. I was pissed off. Oh, Hell on Earth, you know what I'm saying? You could count all the albums, though, you know what I'm saying? And I was like, damn, man. So I never use words like that. Like, I never try to cement the legacy of an album that doesn't have one yet.
Right. I think that's what a lot of times the journalists and the people that are reading the publication or article may not realize. Is like, you got to give it time, man. You know what I'm saying?
Now, here's the thing, guy, right? I do know that what I do influences people. You know what I'm saying? So I will say stuff like, this album will be heard from years to come and will grow in value. I say shit like that all the time. You know what I'm saying? Or I use different words. Like, as talking to a collector, I always use the word essential. That's my word, God.
Right.
That word essential.
Right.
So if he's an essential MC, you better have be aware of him in your collection. If it's an essential LP, you should have it or really listen to it. It's gonna have certain worth, you know? And it's hard to judge now because certain MCs make extremely incredible music, but they're not music that fits a niche, though, of people's daily life. Doing at that moment, you know what I'm saying? And they might not, but they're incredible. You know what I'm saying? Back then, no, there were less records, though, so we'd end up trying stuff that we wouldn't listen to that much and getting into it, even if it wasn't. You know what I'm saying? But that's not the case today, and people are worse listeners, actually.
Oh, most definitely. Their attention spans are shorter. You know, I kind of want to ask you this too, as far as, you know, how we view these albums first off, the way we consume them obviously is different. It is with the touch of a button on our phones, obviously we can get, what's new.
Right.
But you mentioned the year of Born Equality, which is probably, in a lot of people's opinion, maybe that or Bill, maybe the best years ever, right? But with that said, a lot of those albums that we think about from those years, and even newer projects that have come out that have stand the test of time, people grow to have a personal relationship with those albums, right? Like you remember what you were doing, what you might have been going through in your life, where that album helped you, you know what I mean? Get through something. Yeah. So with that said, when it comes to writing and grading an album, how can that be accounted for?
It has to be devalued though, like and dislike. So if when I write, especially in the books though, I give people know the parameters by which I'm judging artists. So I make these things very clearly. So let me set the bar very extreme, like the extreme. So I'm saying things that are lyric heavy, music that is challenging, samples that are really dug for. This is the value that I'm looking for, right? So if it's really on the opposite end of that spectrum, and yet it's enjoyable, that's something I'm still not going to give a good review for. But because people know my parameter, though, they're going to know why.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So, so it's about, as you get to know the readership, you write in such a way where you're letting them know like what the standard of what your judgment is. And this is part of the reason why a lot of the magazines, though, they started to falter.
Because they didn't do that, right?
No, they actually did.
Okay.
I'm saying they actually did. You can't really do it that long without having a parameter of what people expect to be what hip hop quality is. And it's why this is hip hop quality. And you have to do it because every single magazine judges great grades. And so they have a judgment system, and that criteria is being defined when it goes through the conveyor belt. Right. Everybody's article goes through the conveyor belt through each editor, and that's why everything sounds the same too. That's also a clue why I was terrible. I was doing so many literary techniques that were different, and
they couldn't even edit it.
A lot of shit that I wrote looked like errors. Right. So like, don't fix that, because then you fuck up the syntax that I just fucked with here, and then but nobody would be doing that at that. You didn't do that. You have everything sound the same, and what I try to do is always give like a framework for what I expect out of music and what I'm looking for. You know what I'm saying? So like in the books that I do, like these books, the Real of 22, 21.
Yeah, I got them over here.
I'm giving a framework. Part of the framework is defined by the categories. By putting things in categories and showing that they overlap, it shows that people aren't one-sided. Artists aren't one-sided. They fit many categories.
Right.
But when I put them into particular categories, it's also showing you some of the perspectives that I might be seeing out of them. I'm saying, so like if I put them in the crime rhyme, I'm actually going to be judging them more harshly. You see what I'm saying? Because I'm not someone that's enjoying it. Like a lot of the well-meaning or bullshit meaning, like a lot of the white journalists that are outside of this thing. Whether they're well-meaning or not, they're enjoying a lot of shit though, and they're not in the shit.
Right.
So they hear lyrics though, and they hear, wow, that's so dope. But if we really think about it, we hear shit like, you actually do that?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
You have the fucking nerve to do that shit where we live? You know what I'm saying? Like these are the things that we think about. Oh, this is how you want all of us to behave now when we're around?
Right.
So these are things that so when they're in certain categories, I'll be judging them differently or expecting certain things. You know what I'm saying? Out of their content, out of their musical aspects, things like that. You know what I'm saying? And I think once a listener can understand the framework, then they can get a usefulness out of the review. I don't want people listening to everything I like. If I wouldn't write these books if I wanted people to just listen to what I listen to.
Right.
Because the more that I cover all this music, the less that I listen to this music
Mm.
daily,
Mm-hmm.
because there's so much of it. Though I have to keep the pulse and continue to move on.
Right.
So I don't always.
You don't get a chance to just
It's
sit
very
with.
rare that I get to just say, you know what,
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna listen to this
Mm-hmm.
fucking, Ito or Rome
Mm-hmm.
Streets record just to enjoy it. Let me see, just
Mm-hmm.
enjoy it. That very rarely happens. I don't
Right.
always get a chance.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And so I have to have very tuned ears to listen to things and find things very quickly when I listen to things.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and
you probably couldn't do that without a set framework that
right,
going into it. Mm-hmm.
without a framework, what I'm listening to,
Mm-hmm.
without knowing what I expect to hear is what is a quality record, the qualitative aspect of a record, all of these things, you know what I'm saying? But a lot of that is experience, though, God. I don't think most people can hear records as fast as I do and
Mm-hmm.
get everything out of it the way that I do. You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, experiences, like, I had a great time with this guy. Like, I could listen to all Spit Gems records and have great memories with them,
Mm-hmm.
because there's a lot of great memories I had with him, and why not only with him but also watching him perform.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? There's all type of things, but I try to go outside of that.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And look at it qualitatively. And so I work harder to give somebody, they don't know this person, or what is what is really the quality. That's why I always stress the science on music. And I'm always looking for different. God, I spend time thinking of different ways to describe a drum. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
You know what I mean?
But that's the lyrical nature of your style, right? Like, obviously there are many different styles of writing, but I haven't seen in this space many do it the way that you do, because like the actual writing itself is lyrical.
Right,
You're writing
right.
about a lyrical album in a lyrical manner, right?
Right. And that's why I started to call it art on art, because I'm doing my art, but I use yours to throw it on there.
Right,
That's how it becomes an element, and it's I don't really know another way to do this. Like, now I don't even know a technical way of doing it, like a robotic way of doing it. It's gonna come out like that. And my model has never been. Bones Malone inspired me. That's why I call him the father of this element, because he had the most rawness to me of any writer that wrote in hip hop. But there's other writers, and honestly, a lot of them are in the complex thing.
What about I recently, I didn't know much about him before, and I started doing the knowledge to him. He recently passed away a couple of years ago. But what about Greg Tate?
I'm gonna tell you, when I was doing, I was at 85 when I started to do hip hop journalism. And so I was always frustrated with everybody.
Right.
I thought I was better than everybody. I still think that, God.
But I mean, there's some truth to it, though.
I was always very frustrated that they didn't include us Puerto Ricans as part of the people that this was made. It was always, occasionally they would throw it in there. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so people like Greg Tate, who, his pen is crazy, I didn't want to read it all. But most of the people on that list, though, the complex hip hop media all time, majority of those people I didn't read at all.
Right.
I read almost none of their stuff. You know what I'm saying? And the reason I didn't read their stuff was not only because I felt I was competing with them, but also because I felt like they didn't capture what I was dealing with.
Right.
No matter what, they was defining hip hop as an African-American genre, and in the space of African-American genres. And when you look through the history of how other genres were covered in Black American history, they were not defined so loosely. Right. In other words, like when you study jazz more deeply, you see like the Latin rhythms and the Afro-Latin rhythms that go into it, that make it, and inspire it, the polyrhythms, all of these things that we're adding on. In other words, the diaspora. So like, since I started officially, like when I really became a professional, was not in the magazine, but when I got paid to consult, and I got paid to consult at the Center for Puerto Rican Studies in the CUNY Hunter College.
Oh, dope. That's where Dr. John Henry Clark taught.
Right. And I was working with Dr. Raquel Rivera, PhD, and Dr. Juan Flores, who passed away, right? And they wrote many books, but they didn't really write about hip hop, but they wanted to add on in hip hop. And she was right. Her dissertation was on the Nuyorican experience.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? So I was like the ideal Nuyorican, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
That was doing in this hip hop shit, right? And so then I always felt that way. And the deeper I got into hip hop, especially with the magazines, the major magazines, I was like, yo, we really are left out of this shit.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like, we're really not put into this shit at all.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And that whole thing about the whole diaspora was something that was just neglected. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So it wasn't just obviously the Puerto Rican, it's also the
Jamaicans as well.
Right?
Because we see
Yeah.
I ain't gonna give them any light, but we see that fringe internet group
Right.
trying to bring that stuff
Right.
back up, right? And
yeah, exactly. You know, and a lot of writers, like scholars like Imani Perry and others, they try to say, listen, just because Herc was there doesn't mean that it has anything to do with Jamaican things or anything like that. And even if you say like the break beats were done by certain people, which is true, before Herc, no one did it exclusively. Like, that's what we're gonna do the whole time. We know that DJs would rewind certain parts of breaks. That's not a new thing.
right.
The dope part of his song, though, bring that back, come on, that's not new. You know what I'm saying? But to do it repeatedly, nobody was going to a jam and hearing a break beat for 10 minutes.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like the same ass break beat. Like,
right.
you know what I'm saying? That wasn't saying, because most of us would get bored. We would get bored. Like, okay, I like that part, but damn, like, that's not the way we was dealing with music. But when you go and extend that, and you look at the rhythms of hip hop, there's a lot of roots reggae rhythms in the hip hop beats. You know what I'm saying? And so, like, a lot of this influence, though, is not only just in the immediate origins, but as the music develops and becomes a music. Because you can't say hip hop develops as a musical style until the late 80s, really.
Right.
You know, until they really mind James Brown, until sampling becomes a real way of use, then you can't say that. And people go James Brown first. They'll go like, you know, Eric B, Rakim. But on the flip side, right then and there, you have KRS-One sampling countless reggae rhythms.
Right.
Because most of the early BDP albums are reggae rhythms. You know what I'm saying? And, you know, so all of that has something to do with the development of music.
And just to add on, G, is the fact that context matters, because we're talking about something that was created in New York, where the diaspora was, with the black diaspora is like a melting pot of, where you got absolutely. You know, Jamaicans, Puerto Ricans, and all types of, you know, brothers and sisters from different parts of the Caribbean. And so, and of course they would be there from the beginning, right? It doesn't take away any of the ingenuity from I guess African Americans, right? But it's a thing that, I mean, we've seen Wild Style, we've seen who was there, right?
You know what's interesting, God, right? Is that it kind of disrespects even the African American genius, because what people don't understand is that everything was taken away from the Black American.
Right.
That's why the polyrhythms weren't there. That's why the conga, the bongo, the tumbao, you know, all of these drums weren't there in the polyrhythms. They weren't doing that. And yet on the standard drum kit, polyrhythms were being invented on one drum, you know, the Max Roaches and shit like that.
Right.
But the ability to blend different genres back into so fluidly, if you leave out this story of all of us being there, you also take away from the Black American genius of musicians to be able to fuse all that they were hearing.
Right.
And make it something new.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? They just want to say, oh, they were, you know, we just want to say it's a story of us sampling our own music. But that's not how it was historically. That's not how it was with jazz. That's not how it was with soul. You know, the Black American musician was able to sample all types of music everywhere and make it something new. So hip hop is just a continuum of that. But if you want to destroy and get rid of the diaspora, you get rid of that genius.
Right.
You know? And it's whack. You literally get rid of everything that Dizzy Gillespie was doing. You know what I'm saying? You get rid of everything.
If you can't get into that song,
right?
As far as what Dizzy was doing.
Yeah. you know.
I'm saying, well, if you can, if you can explain that a little bit.
What Dizzy was doing though, like in that major aspect though, he was the one that was working with the Cuban musicians, Mario Bausa.
Mm-hmm.
He was working with Mongo Santa Maria and all those great percussionists. And it was he himself that said they're the ones that brought polyrhythms into jazz in the rhythm section, because he said, was it there before? He said, yes, we were doing it here on the trumpet and the horn sections.
Mm-hmm.
You can't stop black polyrhythms, God.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? You can't stop the complexity of what we do.
Right.
It wasn't in the drums. You know? Like I mentioned Max Roach, but Max Roach is much later. You know what I'm saying? Max Roach's genius is much later. And I don't attribute Max Roach's genius to even watching the other Afro-Cuban rhythms and stuff like that. That was something special.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is like what Dizzy was doing was incorporating those polyrhythms and actually making new standards because of that. You know, and by doing that, though, he opened up an improvisation that changed Latin music too, because salsa doesn't exist. Salsa is just a subgenre if you don't understand that it's two things going on. It is Cuban son, S-O-N, blending in the improvisation of jazz, and it's also blending in the streetwise reality of those musicians or non-musicians that were learning how to play instruments raw in New York City,
right,
in Harlem and in the Bronx. You know, like Willie Colon and them, they were considered kiddie bands. Tito Puente called them kiddie bands. You know what I'm saying? And they were doing things that were sonically like wrong. So like when Eddie Palmieri's band with Barry Rogers and other great trumpet players, they decided to just trombone players. They decided to use a 3 trombone section, and they're playing with conga, bongo, timbales. Eddie Palmieri's hitting the piano like a rhythm instrument, and then you have 3 trombones. You're causing chaos in a small club. Like the sound that shit makes is drowning. You know, so these are innovations that nobody would have thought of if they were well schooled, like on that level.
I think that makes it even more doper. You know what I'm saying? Like just that natural, organic, like I don't know. And I'm not saying that training is necessarily a bad thing, right? But when it comes to music, it seems like a lot of people who may be professionally trained have hesitations and reservations about doing certain things outside of a box.
That's always been a thing because they see the technicalities of the era that would come about from doing that. And you know, with Eddie Palmieri though, that innovation mixed with because he had a good schooling actually, that innovation to try daring stuff was the cipher that he was in. You can make those daring things, you know what I'm saying? Where I don't know if he would have that kind of daring, though, if he was just playing in Puerto Rico. In fact, in the 70s, where all this salsa is coming out, it's the Puerto Rican bands, the bands in Puerto Rico. Bobby, that would go back, Bobby Valentin, El Gran Combo. Who else? There's one more. Willie Rosario, right? A timbale player that had his own band, great music. And there's not one record. I know I have all of them though. There's like over 40 albums. Never took a solo.
Wow.
That's how structured they were in their salsa.
Right.
Whereas like in, you know, those based out of New York, they was wilding out. Willie Colon's albums with Hector Lavoe, they was merging in Bomba, Plena, you know, Cumbia, all those things, mixing it in. And of course, Lavoe style, which is a Jibaro style, which is the country style of making the music. You know what I'm saying? And they were mixing. So it was a mixture of the improvisation and then the mixing of other genres. But that is the influence of the way Black Americans make music as well. That shit sounds good. I'm going to put that shit in here in my own way.
Right.
That's why salsa is a very American New York City genre.
And I think you make as far as, again, context matters, right? These people were around each other. This wasn't like, it wasn't just like, I used to build a lot with Willie Colon
before he went right wing though, and then you know knowing somebody named Sunez Allah was no good.
right.
But he used to tell me like all those early clubs where hip hop started though, that's where we were before them. You know what I'm saying? So
Right, right.
like, that's why I always say salsa is the first urban genre. You know what I'm saying? Because that was what was playing on Jerome Avenue down, down in South Bronx and all that shit before the hip hop. You know what I mean? So it's a whole thing, But those things, all of those answers to people that take us out of the diaspora. That's why I wasn't listening to any of these writers. You know what I mean? Reading them because I was like, then they don't tell my story. They don't really understand anything that's going on. You know what I'm saying? So I had to look to the artists that was the very few. And when I was in magazines, that's who I was given. I was given right about Latinos.
Yeah. I was not to cut your wisdom, but I was last month or month before that I started, and I'm still doing it as we speak, but I'm starting to look at a lot of the Latin American and Caribbean genres of music, and a lot of them are like rooted in slave rebellions and all kind of stuff. And I came across Puerto Rican Bamba. And for those that don't know, like what is Puerto Rican Bamba?
There's two major genres that, if you like salsa though, they're affected by it, and that's bomba and plena. And bomba was really like the African rituals, the grumba, very similar to Cuban grumba, and Jamaica has its own grumba too. And it basically was a jam session with those African drums of all types, though, communicating, usually involved with Santeria and other the African religions being preserved and expressed in that manner. So these are dialogues with the drum.
Yes.
The best way, dialogue with the drum.
And I'm glad you said that because it sparked up the memory. It's one of the only genres where the dancer leads the drummer. The drummer doesn't lead the dancer.
Right. It's almost like if you know jazz, it's almost like if the singer scatting was then leading instead of and it's all ways that we were communicating, and the heavier rhythms in salsa, a lot of them is coming from bomba, and the plena is something that uses like a tambora, but it look to people that never seen it, it just looks like a tambourine, but it doesn't have the little cymbals around it. You know what I'm saying? And it's a little bigger, and you hit that with your hand and shit like that, right? And in the plena, you're telling stories about the community and what you're dealing with. So it's basically, a lot of it is freestyle too.
Right.
So, a lot of people think like rhyming really doesn't have a root where those first MCs were like, oh, I remember they did it in the Caribbean. No, they did it, they like James Brown, shit like that.
Yeah.
But the reason it takes so easily is because that's a Black diasporic tradition. In all the genres you see rhyming. I mean, that's what makes a salsa singer more than a salsero, but a sonero. So they use the word sonero, like salsero, sonero is used similar the way rapper MC is. One of respect is a sonero. Because after you do those basic lyrics, I love her, she threw me away, blah, blah, blah. Then now you do soneos, and they do the call, they go, se me fue, and then you do your line. And they go, se me fue, and then you do your line, and it has to rhyme with what you said before. And concert, live, they usually do those off the cuff.
Oh, really?
They used to do those off the cuff, and if you're better, they don't want to hear the ones you said on the album.
Right.
And today's salsa is more romantic based. It's based on romance songs, so you don't really hear those kind of soneos. You'll hear stuff that is really led by Mark Anthony, because he sings salsa like an R&B singer.
Right.
So he wails over it. Salsa sonero wails through it. So if you hear Hector Lavoe singing, he cuts through, whereas Mark Anthony will sing over. He'll sing over it all. You know what I mean?
Right.
That allows him to just sing, sing lovey-dovey things.
Yeah.
Instead of, if you don't have a line, he just goes,
Right.
He's a great singer though, but doesn't have the diversity, the musical diversity. Now, if you see Mark Anthony live, you'll see more of the musicality, but not on the record.
Right. Okay.
They're not selling the record like that.
Yeah, I can understand it, I guess, because he has
not by the 90s.
Right.
Because the 80s had lots of romantic salsa, and it changed everything. It changed everything.
Gee, I got to pivot real quick, because what we got to do, man. Mantras across the Medinas. You and King Kvmal, great project.
King Kvmal knows, right?
How did that come about?
Oh man, yo, King Kvmal, he's had the knowledge for a long time. You know what I mean? And he's been through so many things. He even went through a life-threatening car accident, and he speaks on it on one of the songs in his Paramount EP that came out last year into 2022. And I started to get to know him as a student, and I started to teach him. I started to really go through 120 with him, and he didn't know I wrote about him, but I wrote about his music, and he was like, "Yo, I would love to do a song with you, Sunez, because you have." He respected my writing and stuff. And by now, by 2022, I've been on a lot of songs. I've done a lot of poetry. I've done a lot of verses, like on a lot of songs, and with legends. Like I've had the opportunity to do things with Napoleon the Legend, Skanks the Rock, like everybody I think is essential in this era. I've done shit with them. You know what I'm saying? Whether it's speaking or anything like that, right? So he was like, "Yo, do a song with me." And the song we did was 9,000 Miles. And we just talked our shit about how we got this knowledge.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And the journey. And I always call that the 9,000 miles that we swim. It's always different for everybody. And when we did that song, what's interesting about it is that I didn't realize it though. Most of my lines don't technically rhyme, but I kept such a syntax that it has the same type of sound rhyme. So everything is almost near rhyme and everything is syllabally matched. So it sounds like it sounds like a verse, but if you ever read it, most of it doesn't rhyme. And I love the way this song came. It's probably the best song I ever did. And that came out really good. And he was always like saying like, "Yo, God, you could do a whole album." Like,
you can.
And what people don't get though is that my whole career, I started liking hip hop in elementary school as a b-boy. I never got to listen or choose what music I was listening to on my own or at my home, and so I never got into hip hop music. And in junior high school, I listened to no music at all. There was no songs I could say that was my own. I didn't care. I discovered sports. That's all I cared about though. Baseball, basketball, football. That was all I was, I studied, I memorized statistics. You know what I'm saying? That's all it was. And so music, when I heard hip hop, I literally couldn't make sense of the lyrics. You know what I'm saying? All I saw was that all I knew in as far as like MCs, like if they MC and they do it like Rakim, smooth, even though I didn't know what he was saying either, but I loved I Ain't No Joke. The way that his vibe was, I was like, yo, everything else is corny to me, but if you have that vibe, I'm cool with it. It always had to be like that. That was always in my head. When I got to high school, that's when I really started to love the music. Right? So what is it, like 3-4 years of high school, I become obsessed with collecting the music by any means. That's when I really become obsessed with the music. By 19 years old, I'm a journalist, guy.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? So I'm already interviewing great MCs. And one of my first interviews, like example, is Cool G Rap. So I'm like, nah, man, I'm not writing no rhymes. I don't even think about that. When I was into it in high school, I'm just learning the music. I'm not thinking about being it. I'm like, wow, this is incredible. I'm buying old records, new ones, right? So I never thought about writing a rhyme. You know what I'm saying? So then what happens is that like all these years, I never wrote rhymes at all. I analyzed them. I wrote about them. I understood them. And so making this album, this is the first time I ever wrote rhymes that are verses to rap. Never. I never wrote them before. There's nothing.
Wow. So this is all new.
Yeah. This is my first ever rapping. Ever. I never did it before. You know what I'm saying? So my daughters never heard me write my own raps. Brothers I was around never heard me rhyme, even though there's tons of ciphers I've been in. You know what I'm saying? It's the first time. So when we started to do the album, I was like, okay, I'll try it and shit like that. And the guy was like, ready, God. Like, he was ready. He's emailing me tracks immediately.
Right.
He's not only emailing me tracks, he's like, yo, God, I did this song already. This is about this, though. And, and the first one that he sent was All Because of a Woman.
With Backwood.
Right. And I'm like, I don't know if I could do this, guy. Like the first song got to be the most personal shit.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
was like,
yeah.
I don't know, man. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if I can do this shit. You know what I'm saying? This is what I was really thinking of and shit like that, right? And that's why that one has a very spoken word flow.
Mm.
I
But
was
I think that is extremely dope though, because you move in and out of that. Where on some tracks it is more like a
right.
spoken word, and other tracks it's like bam, bam, I'm spitting
Wait,
bars.
King Kvmal is a real songwriter,
Hmm.
and his thing is about making the song great,
Hmm.
not making platforms for us to sound great. That's not good enough. We have to make songs that are actual songs that are about something, and that was the goal we talked about before we did anything. So
Right.
when he sent me that first song, I was just like, okay, I'm gonna have to talk. And I always have the disclaimer: it's not about any one baby mama that I have, because I have two.
Hmm.
So it could be about both of them, or it could be about none of them. You know what I'm
Right,
saying?
right.
So I have the full disclaimer. You know what I mean? If they see themselves in it,
Mm.
if the shoe fits, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Right. But when we did that song, that's really I was like, wow, I was able to do this, you know, and
Hmm.
I talked about that, you know, and that's why I started with like what's the soul, when I think about love, what do I always listen to most of the work, like most of everything I've ever written.
Hmm.
If you could say there's one person you wrote most of the shit you ever wrote to, it's Phyllis Hyman.
Mm.
It's like that's why I started Phyllis
Wow.
Hyman ballads. Yeah,
Right.
I have a playlist. I have all of her music, but
Mhm.
there are 53 in her career. There are 53 ballads that she sang.
53.
53,
Wow.
and
Okay.
they're all in one playlist that I have, and I play that all the time.
Mhm.
My children, everybody, they hear the shit all the time. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Right.
There's at least one day a week where you're gonna hear Phyllis Hyman ballads. So that's why I started the song off. You know what I'm saying? But the inspirations, I was trying to be inspired by things. Like when I said it's a quarter to understanding, there's no one else building but me and you. That's from a Frank Sinatra song. You know what I'm
Wow.
saying?
I didn't know that. I thought that was,
And
yeah,
right.
yeah.
You know, I think it was One for My Baby, and he's like at the bar. So I was thinking of two things: the Frank Sinatra song, where he's just talking about we're here alone, man. Pour one for me.
Right.
And I was thinking of the vibe of Casablanca. You know, when he's out there, you know, of all the gin joints in the world, and he's drinking that, you know. And for me, I don't drink liquor, but I do drink Baji Chu. That's my kung fu drink. That's what we learned to drink, and that's what we drank to deal with our chi. And if we abused it, we got drunk. So that's always the drink. So when I say
Right.
chew, that's what I'm talking about in all
Okay.
these songs, you know, the Baji Chew. But once that song was out, I was like, I could talk about anything. I could talk about anything because I went through that, like
Right.
that personal ass song. I could write about anything, you know what I'm saying? And then all the other ones came out,
Man.
and some of them took millions of takes, God.
Bro, I'm gonna tell you like this, G. It sounds like you've been doing this for a while. You know what I'm saying? And in a way you have, because of your style of journalism, right? Um, I would, for me, what it looks like is like like you were able to transition so fluidly because of the style of writing that was already lyrical, already had a rhythm to it, right?
Right.
And so it transitions well, God. Like
Right.
sounds really dope. And also I'd
Yeah.
like to shout out King Kvmal because he's spitting on there. You know what I'm saying?
He's such a dope MC. It's so great that I did my first album with somebody who's the epitome of the invisible renaissance. You know what I'm saying? Like
Right.
somebody that has made such great records and people don't know about. That's exactly what I write for. You know,
Mhm.
that's why I said like on Never Respect Fake. That's what I was saying when I said no, I'll take you through the Puerto rip. The invisible
Mhm.
renaissance is deeper than Rosenberg's tiny iceberg tip.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because he'd be finding shit
That I laughed at that when I heard that line.
years later. I was fucking around with him on that line though, because I don't care. And
Yeah.
he's Jewish, So that's why the next line I said, your music is just a weak and German posse.
Right.
And illustrated words prove you cannot see.
Mm.
Nazi. I said Nazi on the thing.
Yeah.
You cannot see Nazi, a pile of vials so high,
I caught that too. I caught that.
The top of your plot. So that's why I said all that though, because I was just fucking around with the words. But certain songs had their names on them. Like that's why I said that verse started with the term blood on the stained glass window. That's why that's in the song. That was the name of the beat. You know what I'm saying? So I was like, I framed it around there. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And I just kept, he said, write about these fake niggas. So I was like, yo, that's like the whole respect fake thing. You know? Like, let me write about everything that they do that's whack. You know what I'm saying?
And for, you know, we've built about this a lot. And for those who may not have caught some of those bills, what is the whole idea of respect fake?
You know, well, especially with social media, this invisible renaissance to me is the 2010s onward. And throughout that time, social media, all you see is people respect those who have made product that has been, commercially successful. So the shit could be really whack though, but they'll be like, nah, it's okay though, because he made money with it. Yo, he did his thing. And I would constantly see that. You know what I'm saying? People would make shit that would be whack. And people talk a lot of shit like there's all this Tekashi this, Tekashi that. I don't want to hear, I really don't like hearing anybody diss Tekashi after he got, in his troubles or did his snitching and stuff. Because when he was making music, though, you guys actually loved the actual fucking trash song.
Yeah, and that was terrible.
So I'm like, he never would have been a thing if you didn't like bad music.
Right.
Liked bad music, and then all of a sudden, whoa, he's actually a sellout. He actually is a snitch and things like that. It's like, you didn't hear the music first? Like you were listening to the music first.
Like, how did we get that far, right?
We weren't supposed to even get anywhere near the floor with this guy when you was dealing with that. So that's why I don't like to hear shit like that. Now it's like, yo, it's always respecting fake, because respect is a two-tone word. Like respect doesn't just mean that you revere someone's integrity and principle, but that you just, you're very, very aware of them. But those two get confused.
Right.
So it's not a great English word. You know what I'm saying? It's actually a word that's very flawed, because it really it gets used when it should just be like, you respect your enemy, but you don't revere their integrity. You don't revere all this stuff. You respect them because you know their potency, but you don't respect their integrity or their principles and shit. When it comes to music, though, people, they put it all in one basket. That's why I go, they respect fake. You know what I'm saying? They respect fake all the time. And I came from the era, people always go, I come from the era of a different cloth. I'm from the era, God, where I saw the bullshit fabric be woven. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I was at the magazines when they were making excuses, and like, I'll tie it into the song that is a big controversy. That's why I wrote Cycle of Trife about that individual. You know what I'm saying? That's why I wrote it about him, because he epitomized all of the time I was at these magazines, these major magazines, where people be like, oh, I like the song, it's blowing up. And they'll try to like the song because it's blowing up. Or they'll dismiss things that he did that weren't right and exact, and they'll say, oh, but. It was like the father, he put the but in the degree. Right. And it was like, because you keep saying but, so but must bring rain, hail, snow, and earthquakes. Yeah. So they were giving me the but brings, you know what I'm saying? And when I made Cycle of Trife, right, Kvmal had given me the track, and he did his verse about like a young kid that got caught up. And he was trying to do devilish, and I was like, I don't write about no street shit. You know what I'm saying? That's not my experience, though. My experience in the street is dealing with those people that are trying to get out of it, though. You know what I'm saying? Right. So I was like, yo, but what about, I told the guy, what about if that nigga made it? What if he was shady and everything he did shady actually worked out? And in my experience, that was the billionaire rapper. Man. That was him, because everything I mentioned in the song is honestly actual fact. Right. But everything in that song was not questioned. People laud the article I wrote in the Source about Funkmaster Flex taking payola. But they never cared to hear who was giving him the payola. You know what I'm saying? And
I didn't realize you wrote that article, G.
yeah, that was me who wrote that. You know what I'm saying? And when I was at the source, we had to spend like weeks making sure that that article didn't have anything that we could be sued upon.
Mm-hmm.
And yo, Dayson was the editor in chief at the time there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember Dayson's wild. And he was like, "We're listening to Hot 97 now because, yo, God, if he says something, we're gonna go down there."
Right.
This is the way the guy was. And you know, like I said, yo, I was like, all right, let's do it. Yeah, say something, you know. But obviously he never mentioned the article. And the thing is that I was like, nobody cared who was paying the most money to get their songs on there. That's why I said in the song, when it comes back, like I start talking on it. By the way, as a note, that's the longest verse, but every single verse on this is one take. I tried that MC Craft, so I did every verse on one take, including Cycle of Trife. And that verse is like 2 minutes long.
Right.
And in one take, but it did not take me one take.
I got you. But the breath control, all of that's on point because you can't. It doesn't. You know, it sounds
I had
like
to figure out where to breathe, where to all that. You know what I'm saying? And that's why I said, you know, like all the things saying there is the points. That's why I said, you know, we got ethos for Bezos and principles for Bill Gates and criminals. So the right of a hustler is to get richer. That all harms are okay if you get bigger. This is just a more lavish thinking of a figure. And obviously I was supposed to say nigger, but I said figure. That's just me paying homage to MF Doom because Doom does that all the time.
Right.
You know
Dope.
But I was like, we allowed heinous comedy originality. So the shark biters in this game of insanity allow everything. And I said snare coffin productions. I used to write snare coffin when the beats are whack. I used to say it's a snare coffin. You know what I mean? It's just dead. And I said snare coffin productions, hot summers, because remember he said hot summers, you get hot. I gave you 8 hot summers.
Yep.
Hot summers through payola introductions. So I'm saying, yeah, people would like the songs, but you gave the payola to introduce it.
Right.
Bigger than AZ's whatever AZ might muster or anybody else. You know, there was a lot of guys out there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's why I said hot summers through payola introductions. Wore our flag with Jehovah embellishments. You know, BK Nets toy to gentrify the residents. There's people gave him all this props for repping the BK Nets. He didn't really own this shit.
No, he ushered in gentrification.
He was advocating. At the same time, people were like, oh yeah, I'm gonna get my own BK Nets jersey because he's out down with it. There were families out in Bed-Stuy fighting for their home.
Right.
They was fighting for their home. They was doing organized, you know, marches and activist marches against it. All the while, he's, you know, laughing it up when they asked him about gentrification. He's like, you know, I kind of like it. And I'm not saying that, you know, the whole thing was like the music could be good, but it don't mean nothing to me, God. It don't mean nothing. It could never be GOAT level, God, because it always was compromised with all of these things that we never asked about. We never cared to ask about this.
Right.
You know, he got crowned and no one cared. You know what I'm saying? And that's why I said, like, there's a thing in the ancient Chinese text, you know, that principles, they exist when they are toppled. So in other words, you don't describe righteousness until devilishment occurs.
Right.
Until then, we just naturally righteous. You know, and that's why I said the good ain't the only ones talented. You know, and I was trying to do it like a fairy tale. This fairy tale actually happened,
right? Right.
The good ain't the only ones talented. Principles of a world so demented. Land of oppression where we appease our repression with no transgression. You know, like we'll allow anything. We'll allow anything because, you know, we need these things. You know what I'm saying? We appreciate that somebody else was able to get through this muck. So we're not gonna analyze the bullshit that he did because we don't know if we'd be a hypocrite too, you know. That's why I said that, you know what I'm saying? But
and you know, it's interesting because that always gets thrown into the debates and the argument when we're talking about skill, and somehow somebody will throw in, well, such and such made this much money, and it's like that's not an indicator.
I did this thing like, and I said like there are certain MCs that if you take them off the planet, there's nothing that changes in hip hop. There's like if you took KRS off the planet, though, there's countless things that don't exist.
Mm-hmm.
And if they do get created, they're in a totally different way now.
Right.
Just like obviously Rakim, you know what
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying? And people like that. If Jay-Z didn't exist, there's no real technique that you lose. There's no techniques that you lose. There's not even like commercial styles because, sorry to say, but Busta Rhymes exists.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Well, that was kind of the knock on him anyway, was that he was kind of taking other styles that were already being used, right?
And I threw all of those darts in together. I really did. He had dexterity steeped in derivatives. Whatever destiny creeping, he was competitive. You know what I mean? I was throwing in that thing.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go back. I'm gonna have to go back.
Yeah. And I used to have this argument because someone be like, yo, we gotta follow everybody that's dealing with the revolution. They're gonna bring it. And that's why I even mess with Day Son, because I said since Hell Yeah, that's the song with Dead Prez.
Mm-hmm.
The Hell Yeah remix.
Oh, yeah.
Since Hell Yeah, they're waiting for reparations and revolution. But how long it takes for Chair with Bling on to reach absolution.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? Because remember he said had that line, Chair with Bling on, you know, and I always thought it was such a bullshit line.
Right.
And nobody questions shit. Nobody says anything. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But you know, that's the way it was. And I didn't say it to like, you know, all hip hop is battle. So as a writer, though, I think I really write God like nobody can topple me. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So if somebody's gonna say, well, like, yo, he's a better writer than you, and so that I'll say emphatically no.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? If
And
somebody's
mean
gonna, yeah, if somebody's gonna say, like, yo, how could you write about that? He's successful, this and that. And I'm like, these are all the things that we were supposed to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
All of these things that I mentioned in the song, this is not written for him.
Right.
This was written because these are all the things that I wasn't allowed to question or write about during the 2000s, which I call the Dark Ages. And that's the one reason why it was so personally the Dark Ages for me, because they wouldn't let me write, God.
Mm.
They wouldn't let me question things. I said, we gotta write that, right? But we can't question that he just took EPMD's song and made a pop song with Foxy Brown. Like, we can't, you know, ain't no nigga.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't a jack of the original sample. That was a jack of the EPMD instrumental. That's not a jack of the original. Unless you're telling me that he decided to sample it.
You know, that's funny. That's funny because Prince said that. He's like, at one time, he said, pretty soon, this sample is going to be sampling the song that was sampled.
Right. Yeah. And that's what he did. And I was like, yo, certain rules are being broken here. Mm. It's the same thing I had with Biggie. You know, when they was using Isley Brothers, I was like, yo, nobody uses Isley Brothers. Like, not that one.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You're going to use Between the Sheets?
Right. The most, probably one of their most known songs.
And the song that was already released on its own instrumental. Like, there's no samples there. There's not, you're just re-looping a big hit. A big hit. You know what I'm saying? Like, what's the year value on that? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And these are things I was saying, because I used to argue against the pop A side, hardcore B side as a blending of appeasing all of us.
Is that what they were doing at the time? Like on the single, it would be the pop song.
That's Diddy's main innovation. You know, people always talk about the R&B and everything like that, and these are some of his innovations. Like, because Biggie is really just a packaged heavy D hardcore,
right? Which
was genius. You know what I'm saying? But the pop A side, hardcore B side was something that was exceptional, because by that time you start to get more women, more clubs wanting to listen to music to dance to. A lot of the more pop things, like, you know, like what Miami was doing and shit like that. You know what I'm saying? 2 Live Crew shit. Women wanted shit to dance to, but from New York. Right. So this was prime. And so what was happening was like, oh, New York is giving you R&B hip hop to dance to. We got to give them a hip hop song to dance to. And he was the perfect segue with that.
Right.
So these are innovations, like, but to me, they're more like Miles Dyson and Terminator 2. You know what I'm saying? I willingly go back, God. I willingly go back and return. You know what I'm saying?
What about whatever he was doing it in reverse with Mary? And
well, you know, that's the whole thing, right? Mary J. Blige, like In My Life, that's a classic album.
Facts.
But it's also Miles Dyson. I would go back and return that album to the essence, no matter how much I loved it. If I had a time machine, I would return it. So you
why is that?
Because the samples are blatant, though, God.
Her
rhyming off Roy Ayers,
Yeah,
Everybody
yeah,
Lives in
son,
Sunshine,
yeah.
Barry White, Straight Up, things like that.
And it's two covers on there, right? I
Yeah,
believe. Mhm.
right. And the covers are something too. That was something the covers are fine. They're not as ingenious to me, but that's why people think Shaka Khan's a hater or shit like that. She was hating because there's nothing done to the
Mhm.
tape. Not that it was redone again. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm. Mhm.
But I had no problem with that. And I love My Life album. I love that
Yeah,
album.
me too.
You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
it has its thing. Like it showed that if we can, we're gonna sample much more basic. And they did, yeah.
Yeah, no
They
chops.
sampled more basic.
Yeah, yeah.
They sampled more basic and it ushered in. So but I use one individual to express all that frustration. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
In the cycle of tribe because it was about an individual. You know what I'm saying?
Before we go, it kind of makes me. I kind of want to ask you this. I haven't watched it yet. Dilla on Hulu came out a few days ago, and we're talking about how 2000s bad boy era. They were uh, really just jacking for beats. What is the difference in somebody like Dilla and what he was doing compared to what they were doing over there at Bad Boy?
That's a great question because Jay Dilla has it. People don't really get the difference because Jay Dilla had a very pop sensibility.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? If we had to amplify it, like amplify it even more, it's what Kanye did in the very beginning. They have the ability to find the pop in the sample.
Right, right,
You know,
right.
so for Kanye, the better comparison is to compare him to RZA. Whereas RZA finds the deep blues in the sample,
Mm-hmm.
Kanye was finding the pop in the R&B sample. And obviously like the Luther, you know what I'm saying? When he was
Yeah.
finding that, like he's finding the pop. With Jay Dilla, though, it's basically in, the basic structure of Jay Dilla, though, is in the discord that he creates, though. So, his drums, they hit on an offbeat segment,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and because of that, though, they engage the listener with a new rhythm.
Right.
It also could fool you into a new dance rhythm. In other words, you're learning the rhythm that bangs. It's a different type of rhythm. So he fucks with the 4/4 a lot, though. It's not always clean. You know what I'm saying?
And
So
then didn't some drummers after from what he was doing, they were actually trying to play like that, right?
Oh,
Like how he
absolutely.
was playing on the beat machine.
Absolutely. You know what I'm saying? And I think this though, I think also the actual sample sounds that he took, the orchestras, right? He really knew how to find the dance rhythms in the actual orchestra playing. Remember, all of our music though really is polyrhythmic in so many ways.
Right.
You ever look at his samples, not the drums, the samples, he's able to find the polyrhythmic melodies in those samples. You know what I'm saying? And you know, and that's what makes the genius of Jay Dilla though. There's a guy that produces like that now, and I detailed it in the reel of 2022. His name is Buddha Monk.
Yeah.
And Buddha Monk makes a lot of off kilter tracks like that, and his sample stuff is real dug for. You know what I mean? And he's like that school of Jay Dilla.
Right.
Do it totally different. Obviously, if you're looking for like blatant school of Jay Dilla, that is different, but their own shit. But it's from that school. You're gonna look at like Black Milk. You know what I'm saying? Like that's clear Jay Dilla school. But when they have that discordness, that's the thing about what we're able to do with music though is to find a new rhythm in something that usually would have discord in it.
Right.
Right. And that's what Thelonious Monk found. He was able to do that. The only thing is that you have to take the chance to acclimate to it, and then you get it. But the genius of Jay Dilla is that like there's almost no acclimation to it. It appeals immediately.
Right. Right.
Like it only frustrated us with the with the records when he was doing Tribe Called Quest albums, because we didn't want to hear that discord with Tribe Called Quest albums.
Right.
But like I always say this though, people sample jazz, almost no 90%, 95% of hip hop songs that sample jazz. When you sample jazz, it is not jazz, God. And that's the thing, like Diggable Planets music is not jazz.
Right.
It sounds jazzy because of the horns and everything, the instrument sounds, but there's no improvisation. There's nothing in there. So now it's not jazz anymore.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So like when you do it like that, what people are getting used to is the sounds and the orchestration of jazz that we were used to in Tropical Quest records.
Right.
We weren't used to like that discordant pop sound, you know? And that synth, there's a synth in Jay Dilla's sounds that we was like, it's too synthetic for Tribe. When you go back though, it sounds nice though. A lot of the Tribe records sound great, but they're not what we had on Low End Theory, Midnight Marauders. And so we have problems with it. You know what I'm saying?
A lot of people probably wasn't ready for that.
Oh yeah, no, we're still not there. I'm still bitching about it. Right. You say I'm not ready. I'm still not ready though. I still go. I like it. I wish they gave it to somebody else. You know?
But you know, Sunez, it's always a pleasure, bro. You know, we're gonna keep doing this, man.
There's so much to build on, and you know what I mean. And you know, if I could give like a quick rundown of some of these songs, like I kind of give them in the order that we made them. When I did Rally Round the Family is a line from Rage Against the Machine song. You know what I'm saying? I think it's on Bulls on Parade though. And that, just for listening, when you hear that song, that's a real story of me in a rally, we're marching, a real march against the killing of Anthony Baez. Right? And in that crowd in the back, I'm in the crowd in the back, and Fat Joe's next to me.
Wow.
And this is like 1998, I think it is, because it's a march. He was killed years ago, but his mother at the time became a councilwoman, and she marched again. And I was like, Fat Joe, what are you doing here? And that's what I'm talking about in the rhyme. And how like I felt like when we got blockaded at the bridge, I was like, yo, they could just kill us here. Like,
right.
We have no power here. We're doing this march, and it's like, for what? You know what I'm saying? So that's where that song came from. The Gets Deep song is like what we were talking about, like Puerto Ricans in hip hop. You know what I'm saying? And obviously, a lot of the lines in Spanish, though, especially in the second verse.
Yeah, that was dope.
Those are Hector Lavoe lines. Those are
wow. Okay.
Those are funny lines that he said though. Like basically said, "A la mujer tengo un montón." Like for women, I got a chunk. You know what I'm saying? That's what he would say. But for you, I'll sing to you in Hong Kong, like kung fu. You know what I'm saying? And I'm like, I could use that line. I'm allowed to use that line, God. You know what I'm saying? Right. Kung fu. You know what I mean? But the song was like, yo, when I say Kvmal, it's like he's a real producer, executive producer. When we were doing Gets Deep, he was texting me violently, yelling at me and telling me, yo, God, you got to yell at the song. You got to get angry at the song. You got to make this song yours. You got to tell them about the Puerto Ricans and hip hop and that they belong and all that FBA bullshit and tell them what it is. And so that's why I went in. I've never rhymed that fast and on that third verse. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And I only had a segments of time. I was like, I got to say everything. And so I said everything in that joint. And when I said like I rocked the 2 New York City flags, the Puerto Rican flag and the flag of our nation, the gods and the earths, those flags were made in New York City. They were created in New York City. Right. People don't know that, So that's where that came from. And when we did that song, that's when we knew we had something, God. Like that we were doing something that was really gonna be
really
good,
dope. Yeah. And
it parallel that to Brothers of the Invisible Renaissance. That was the song where I hated my performance on that.
Why is that?
And because if you listen to it closely, MCs will hear it, so don't bother me to say it though. But I lose the pocket for a moment in there. The pocket that I wanted, I lose it though. I love the way my voice pitched. I was very angry when I did that song, and my pitch was great, but I was out of pocket a little there. And when you rhyme with Kvmal, who's in the pocket, like he's just backstroking, like that's nothing. I was at that time, I was like, man, I got to do it like him. And instead of doing it like me. And so that song was going to get scrapped. But then we gave it to Infinite Mind because that's like a perfect beat for him.
Right.
He just killed that.
And it makes everything also, it makes the whole track, like even if you're, because, there are a lot of cases where MC might get out of the pocket for a minute. Right. It's dope though. You know what I'm saying?
It works for people, but it worked by accident for me.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Right.
You know? And then we would do things like Thin Line. He rhymed about his baby mama and all that he went through, and I was like, it was, except for like one detail of like his daughter getting like missing for a while. Everything he said in that verse, I lived through. So I was like, yo, God, I got to say something else.
Right.
I went the opposite way. That's why I said it's called a thin line, like the Persuader song. It's a thin line.
Yeah.
So I said, let me talk about the mother that did something great, and I talked about my old earth. Because she's the one that made me write. She's the one that was a great teacher. She's the one that I first learned how to speak this way. You know what I mean? And the Inscription, that was a solo joint from the get. The guy, when we started making the album, he started telling me, you got to have a solo joint where you just go off. Where you go off. And I was like, oh shit. He was pressuring me with that one too. And that one is like the first verse, I'm just trying to kill it. You know what I'm saying? And tell you where I'm from. But in the second verse, that was a metaphor. A metaphor about this knowledge and this what we deal with. You know what I mean?
Right.
And man, that shit worked out.
It did.
That's what I teach. You know what I'm saying? Like everything was in there. I kind of want to make a song that I wanted to hear when I was 85.
Right.
Something that had the knowledge in there, building on it, and something that you could rewind it deep. You know what I mean? And then the songs went out from there. With the build, he had that song already. So when he gave it to me, I was like, Sadat is building, God is building. Let me take you what it would be like if I walked you into my class. You know
right. I think that's definitely one of my favorite joints.
Yeah, I was like, peace. Right. I was like, take your feet around me. Disciple root with your feet at a sound, see? You know what I'm saying? And that was like that, And Medina's mantra was an inf mega beat. And he gave that to us. And I was like, oh man, I'm just gonna try to rap on this inf mega beat. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so that one I was just playing with a poem I had. There's an old poem I had. That's why I said, like, everywhere they're surrounding you, the clock is, we're getting, the guns are aimed at us at every tick of the clock. That's what I said, for every tick of click and every talk of clack. Train the duck guns of dicks, the detectives, and savage fist that clock. Then devil snake kicks him back. My Dao De Ching. Dao De Ching means way in its power. My way in its power never lack. Past blues splattered lives and hells of white frights hives. So people, they scared of the original man taking over. They get hives and shit. Right. And then I said through Rocket's red swear. That's like the Star Bank. Rocket's red swear, and they're cursing. Verse rules and regulations. We dare because we go against the rules and regulations. Scarred, mangled banners wave. The hearts of babies we still save. So I was trying to encode like all of the shit that we have in like a syncopated rhythm in that shit. You know what I mean? And I was like, yo, that's the mantra, the shit that we were saying. But our swords, I named it after my magazine that I had, Our Sacred Words, but that was the last song. So I was like, yo, what are we about? And the name of the beat was called City on Fire. That's the name of the beat. So I was, one of my students was joking, and he's like, yo, you got songs about the Mets? And I was like, oh. I love the Mets, but I'm trying not to be on the album though. So we were talking about the city. So I was thinking about the Metropolitan, the logo, the Mets logo, the city. That's why I said veer into the silhouette of the Metropolitan logo to perform pirouettes of a charlatan. Like you see all the snake niggas dancing in there. You know what I mean? Right. And that's what's the punishment.
That's the thing. I didn't mean to cut you. People have like, it's not, you're not going to catch everything in one listen.
That's what I said. Like, I can't, my first time MCing, I can't compete with all of these like athletic showmen though, but I doubt, I know, because I have all these records. Almost no one has bars like that.
Right.
No one has bars that well written with words like that. You know what I'm saying?
Are you hungry?
You know what I mean? And so like all of the lines go in there, and I use different techniques and shit like that. But we have fun with that shit.
Yeah.
That was so much fun, you know what I mean? And when we did that song, we was like, yo, that's the closer. We done. It was the last song we did, and it was we do have a bonus track though.
Are you starving?
I haven't even named the shit yet. But the way I rhymed on it though is crazy. I did some.
I gotta hear that, dog.
You know what I mean? But it's a bonus track that we wanted to give to people that bought it on the Bandcamp.
Dope.
So I guess it'll leak out and shit. Like, I've been seeing my album bootleg somewhere, so I feel.
Have you really?
Yeah, so I'm like, yeah, wow, it's bootleg, you know what I mean? Like,
Well, that's what I wanted to get you to like. Where can everybody find it? Because obviously,
right,
it's
right,
going to be on DSPs, but the importance of supporting the
right,
Bandcamp
right.
as well.
It's on all the DSPs, but the best way to support us is on the Bandcamp. So if you write Sunez, Sunez, King Kvmal, King Kvmal is King, King, Kvmal. So instead of the first A, it's a V. So Sunez King Kvmal .bandcamp.com, and that's where the album is. It details the album, all of that. And I'm working on a lyric book.
Yeah,
Like
that's what I was going to
details the
ask you.
song
I
and
really was about to ask you that.
what they mean, because there's a lot of stuff. Like the inscription is a whole story in itself. The shit that I was talking about in there, because some things are real heavy, but they just were fly shit.
Right.
But they were real heavy. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Because other things are real deep, and they talk about this knowledge itself, and the triple stage of darkness shit and all that kind of shit. You know what I mean? But I just we wanted to make stuff that people would hear all the time. I guess the only thing I didn't cover, like, to show you how dope he is, right? Precious Cargo, because he tells the story. Precious Cargo is Kvmal's solo joint. He was sick when he made that.
Wow.
And so that was like a few days where I was just like, I'm not even gonna bother the guy about the next song that we're making or nothing like that. You know what I mean? And he was like, yo, I'm feeling ill. I think I might have COVID. But yo, check this out. See what you think about this though.
He was in there working.
That verse, and I was like,
wow.
What do you mean? What do you want to do with that? This is fire right there. Right. And he was like, he was all sick. So I always call that I always call that the Jordan flu song.
Yeah.
Because he killed that and he was fucked up. You know what I'm saying? So that became his solo cut. You know what I mean? And then there's two things with all the trolls I get on the YouTube and everything like that. That's where the skits come with the trolls. So it came with two things. The All Because of a Woman song, that's named after the Harold Melvin and the Blue Note song.
Dope.
And he's playing the song in the beginning of the troll skit. So that's an old joke to one of the trolls and shit like that. Because I know that this troll was basically upset because a Puerto Rican woman had let him down. You know
right.
They want to take it out on me.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But and that's why that's why these songs, like when we got the artist, like when we got back with Sweetie, this song was no good to us though until we got her. Like this song was incomplete to us by far, and we was like, yo, we need an MC. And I was like, yo, the Earth is like the up and coming, she's like the next level.
Right.
And when she said she would do it, because like we was like, yo, our budget ain't got we may not match her budget.
Right.
She was like, she did it off the love and
dope.
And she did that mad fast too, man. Like she's amazing. You know what I'm saying? And but those are disses to the troll. The skits and the name of that song.
Right. Well, dude, that's what I like about this project. It's so layered, man. Like I said, like
there's a lot of stories album, though. You know what I mean? Like, but the troll shit was funny though. I can't believe that I kept didn't laugh when he was doing that shit. The troll voice to me, it was hilarious.
Now, definitely gotta ask this: will you and is there a possibility y'all are running back?
King Kvmal doesn't want to do any full-length albums anymore. This to me,
really,
when we were making this, he was like, "This is it for me."
Wow.
And for him, this is his greatest experience, and he's only do songs here and there. I was supposed to do a solo album with Willie Ways, one of my students too, a long time ago, because he get beats and shit. And I have a lot of songs like already like written and shit like that. But we just did this because he threw things so fast at me and he was so organized and he knew what he was doing and it was so much fun. So I know that on my album he's gonna be on songs and shit.
Dope.
You know what I'm saying? It's like I can't do no more albums or continue to make music without throwing him on shit. You know what I'm saying? He's just too dope. You know what I'm saying? But for him, that's it. You know what I'm saying? Like that was like, that was Jordan. You know what I'm saying? Like, Utah Jazz and shit like that.
Right. Walking off to the locker room. You know what I'm saying?
This was his last dance. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And man, what a fucking last dance it was. You know what I'm saying?
Most definitely.
We had so much fun. Like, like there were so many things I was trying to do and did. Like I didn't even tell you, like Thin Line when I was rhyming about my older. That's my. It's a terrible imitation, so it sounds different. But that's my KRS-One imitation. That's it. If you notice, I did beef. What a relief.
Right. And that's off the BDP beef song,
Right.
right? Mm-hmm.
So I said peace. Right? I said peace, right? It's never belief. When will this confusion finally cease? But I'm trying to do his inflections, but because I can't do his voice, it sounds totally different. But that was my imitation.
But it was dope. It was dope, though. It was dope, G.
That was my KRS. You know,
Sunez, again, man, I definitely appreciate the time.
all the time.
Yeah, for sure. And not just, everything that you're doing at the school and the art and the writing, man, and he's got a lot going on. And so, what I'm saying, I mean, salute to you, because that's definitely not an easy thing to do. I'm definitely going to have the link for the Bandcamp and the DSPs in the description. But again, let everybody know where they can find your works, because I know you got more than just the album.
Yeah,
you got
man.
Books too.
I got books. They're all on Amazon. You know what I'm saying? Like, I got them all here. If you contact me on social media, I always have them on sale. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, this is like a phone now, like my own joint.
Right.
The Reel of 2022. This is 460 pages. All the music. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's gonna get you in the door. Like, if I miss shit, you in the door. The book about my pedagogical teachings and my journey. You know what I'm saying? The Peace Course. The Art and Art. This is my creative writings that make this hip hop element that I say is journalism, a creative element. The Reel of 2021 and 22, right? One that started it all. And then my very first book, Filtered Real, Essays from the Invisible Renaissance. So these are essays throughout the 2010s that are most crucial about the music. And those are all on Amazon. If you want the better deal, you contact me directly on the social media, Sunez on IG, Sunez7, the number 7 on Twitter. Honorable name, Edward Rodriguez, with the Sunez in the middle. That's written like that because when you used to write in the source would not allow you to use your nickname or your street name or anything like that. You're filed with the government name. And so you would put the name you were known by in quotation.
Right.
That's why, like, because sometimes people, or trolls too, they try to act like Sunez is just a Spanish name that I'm just using and shit like that. No, it's not. Sunez is a real name made with the supreme alphabet. Sun is, you know what I mean? The sun is Allah, you know what I mean? And that's why I call it Sunez Allah. But yeah, I'm on all the social media. The books are on there. I'm on premierhiphop.com, Premier with the E at the end, not DJ Premier, Premier with the E at the end, the way you usually spell it, premierhiphop.com. And my writings are there too, if people want to read my latest writings that I throw up there, you know what I'm saying? So it's a whole bunch of stuff. I also do DJ Toshi's Classic Storm Radio.
Yes, indeed.
You know what I'm saying? So I do those interviews and stuff like that, you know what I'm saying? So we have Taravan Poo. By the time this is out, probably Ty Farris will be out too. I did a
dope.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And my Power Right show will get back on the air. I just been doing so much stuff that I haven't even been able to do my own podcast. You know what I'm saying? Do that again. You know what I'm saying? But we'll get back to that. You know what I'm saying? Because now I'm working on books and albums. You know, so now people want me to make music. But I'm on the new Thurston Howell album, narrating it.
Dope.
There's a couple of other MCs that I have like real bars on their next albums and shit. So people think like it gets better. It gets better, the flow. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm learning, you know what I'm saying, how to make it, more. So it's a lot of shit, God. And I just step into every opportunity, God. Like, I'm not looking I never look to all this, do this shit. You know what I'm saying? But I just take every opportunity that I can, though. You know what I'm saying?
Right. I think that's a jewel in itself. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. If people ask, I'm like, yo, let's try it, though. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And, yo, that's what it is. You know what I'm saying? Like, doing this with Kvmal, he was educating me about pockets and melody and writing choruses. I still suck at writing choruses. You know what I'm saying? But I learned so much about writing choruses, though, that I can make ones that I want to hear, even though it might not be like the right ones.
Right.
Way, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Because I always hated choruses. I've always been MF Doom with the choruses, you know what I'm saying? Right? But he taught me so much, though. It was such a learning experience. And he's such a great God. Like, he's a great person, God.
Yes.
Like, he's a genuine person. There's so much love in his heart, God. Like, this album healed me. Like it healed me making it. You know what I'm saying? Like it was
That's
beautiful.
dope.
You know, like it was beautiful making it. You know what I'm saying? So it's just a blessing. You know what I'm saying? I always created things on my own. I never created something where I did it with another person. Even the magazines I made, I was doing it all 100% on my own.
Right.
This is the first time I created something with someone else.
And
Like
that's a everlasting connection when you do that.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. You know what I'm saying?
No doubt, G. Well, until the next time, like I said, we didn't even get to what we was going to, but
yeah,
it's
there's
all
so many
good.
things, man.
But it's all, it's all
Yeah,
good.
man. So
You know how we do, man. We'll
oh,
run it
man.
back. But again, man, I appreciate you for coming through, G.
Oh, absolutely, God. Absolutely, God.
All right, peace.
Indeed. Peace to God.
Peace, God.